What up, African Roaders? Home Team here, and I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. King Sejuayo came to the Zulu throne in 1873. Sejuayo was a very intelligent political force, as well as an able military commander. He overcame many opponents on his way to power. His father, Mpande, had seized the Zulu throne from Sejuayo's uncle, Dingain. The elder of two sons, Sejuayo had been declared Mpande's heir at a very early age. However, his father underwent a change of heart, and during the 1850s began showing favor to his younger son, Umbulazi. Eventually, this led to a civil war in which the forces of the two brothers battled for supremacy. Although Umbulazi was supported by the British from their neighboring colony of Natal, in 1856 he was defeated and killed, leaving Sejuayo the heir to the throne. From 1857 until 1872, Sejuayo was effectively the king of Zululand, with his father holding the throne in name only. During this period, Sejuayo faced frequent incursions by the Boers, who were intent upon pushing into Zululand from the Transvaal region. Sejuayo responded by attempting to establish a diplomatic link with the British, who, interested in dominating southern Africa themselves, were intent on reducing Boer power. Thus, Sejuayo had reason to be optimistic when the British annexed the Boer South African Republic in April 1877. Sejuayo's optimism was short-lived, however, for Britain clearly saw a strong, independent Zululand as a threat to its rule in the region. Soon the British began a campaign to discredit Sejuayo and justify intervention on their part. In 1878, Sejuayo provided them with their excuse when his warriors raided Zulu opponents in Natal. In response, the British authorities issued Sejuayo an ultimatum that they knew he would reject. The ultimatum was to hand over the raiders, pay substantial reparations, and disband the powerful Zulu army. When Sejuayo inevitably refused, the British invaded on January 11, 1879, thus initiating the Anglo-Zulu War. Confident that their 18,000 troops would be more than enough for the situation, the British, under the leadership of Lord Chelmsford, were sadly mistaken. They were unprepared for both the number of warriors in Sejuayo's army and the intensity of their efforts. In short, Zulu commanders simply outmaneuvered the British at the Battle of Isandlwana on January 22nd. The British suffered a crushing defeat, one of the worst ever for their overseas military campaigns. Ironically, this defeat made the British consider the Zulu a real force to be reckoned with, and so they determined to put out much effort in order to defeat them. The British went on to defeat Sejuayo at Ulundi on July 4th, and after the British victory, Sejuayo was sent to Cape Town, where he was held prisoner for 2 years before being exiled to the neighboring area of the Cape Flats. Sejuayo, however, refused to give up and thought of returning to power, and given his political acumen, he convinced the British to restore him on the Zulu throne. For the British, Sejuayo represented an alternative to the chaotic squabbling among the various independent Zulu lords who had been left to govern Zululand after his defeat. Sejuayo returned to Zululand from England early in 1883, and he soon was back on the throne. This time, however, the British made sure that he had no army to support him. Sejuayo's return to power was not unopposed, however, and he immediately found himself in a civil war against the forces of Ziphebu, who previously had been placed in charge of northern Zululand by Britain. The war went on from March to October, with Sejuayo finally being defeated and forced from power. Ironically, the defeat of Sejuayo by Ziphebu and his Boer allies ended the era of great Zulu kings, and via hindsight, made Sejuayo the last great Zulu king. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. The Ashanti Kingdom rose to dominate most of modern-day Ghana around the early 18th century. Existing as a tributary to the Dinkiera Kingdom in the late 17th century, the Ashanti state of Kwamin saw an opportunity to break free from their rule. The Ashanti are one of West Africa's most well-documented people via oral and written accounts, largely due to their interaction with the British. The legacy of the Ashanti reaches far and wide, as they are one of the most popular African ethnic groups around the world. In fact, many black celebrities have visited the Ashanti people and formed bonding relationships with them. For many Afro-descended people, the Ashanti represented African pride and even royalty. So how did a former tributary Twi-speaking group come to be such a powerful symbol of overall African strength and statehood? In other words, how did the Ashanti actually seize power? Before unified Ashanti national identity came into play, the most dominant group of Africans in Ghana came from the Kingdom of Dinkiera. Dinkiera was uncontested in the 1660s and 1690s. It was the most important inland supplier of gold and slaves to the Dutch at Elmina and the English at Cape Coast, and the wealthiest importer of European guns and munitions. Dinkiera and the Europeans had a mutual interest in keeping open the 130-mile trading corridor between them. Their ability to control the trade was one of the foundations of their power, and Dinkiera was willing to do anything to maintain it. Any challenge to their trade routes and access to European firearms and other goods were completely crushed. However, Dinkiera's strength was also its weakness. Ensuring the stability of their trade empire took a lot of manpower, resources, and especially gold, and in the late 17th century, they were pretty much at their limit. This put mounting pressure on their rulers, one notable ruler being Bomponsam. Bomponsam and his successors became much more demanding and predatory towards their own people, as well as on their tributary states. The capital of Dinkiera was Abankaseso. In about the middle of the 17th century, Abankaseso reached the pinnacle of its power when Bomponsam became so rich that he appointed the first treasury head amongst the Akan peoples to keep account of his own personal wealth. This was stored in a great big house called Sekadan, or the Gold House. Abankaseso became the center of the struggle to maintain order and authority. Unfortunately, enforcing their power meant becoming more and more cruel and violent. After the death of Bomponsam, his successor, Ntim Gyakari, took the throne. Ntim, feeling the pressure as did his predecessor before him, also put mounting pressure on his people and the northern tributaries, the state of Kwamin of the Ashanti being one of them. Wars and skirmishes continued to exhaust the Dinkiera treasury. The capital at Abankaseso used force even within Dinkiera itself to sustain its military posture. In other words, Dinkiera was caving in on itself from the inside. One leader at Kwamin, the celebrated founder of the Ashanti state, Osei Tutu, was in a position to observe everything that was happening in Dinkiera. He was well aware of how disgruntled its citizens were becoming, and he continued to take the temperature of the entire region. The oral tradition of the Ashanti in Kumasi tells us that the Dinkiera ruler Ntim brought disaster on himself because of his overbearing demands for gold, a resource that would ensure his authority. Perhaps seizing on the growing weakness and morale of Dinkiera, Osei Tutu had taken revenge on the neighboring Doma people who had fought and killed his uncle, Obiri Yeboah, the former ruler. This, of course, did not go over well with Ntim, because both the Ashanti at Kwamin and the people of Doma were tributaries of the Dinkiera kingdom, and flexing your muscles like that without permission is an absolute no-no and a threat to Dinkiera authority. According to Ashanti oral accounts, the Dinkiera immediately sent a messenger to Osei Tutu addressing him and his people. The message goes as follows: that because Osei Tutu had given protection to Odoro Agyensamo, who had committed a serious offense at Dinkiera and escaped to Kumasi, that because Osei Tutu had ceased the payment of his annual tributes to the king of Dinkiera since he became king of Asante, that because Osei Tutu waged war against Odom Kusi of Doma, his fellow subordinate chief on the Dinkyera without his permission, the king of Dinkyera demands from Asantene the following: to fill the brass pan to the brim with pure gold, to send to the king of Dinkyera a long necklace of precious beads, and that the king of Asante and each of his provincial chiefs must deliver his favorite wife to the king of Dinkyera through the messengers in marriage, and that the king of Asante and each of his provincial chiefs must deliver his beloved child to be sent to the king of Dinkyera. Of course, Ose Tutu would not be known as the heroic figure in Ashanti society if he accepted these demands, so he in his bravery rejected them, and both sides prepared for war. Now, in general, in the mid to late 17th century, military competition between Akan rulers and estate holders with followers or supporters led to a revolution in warfare in the modern region of Ghana. As each ruler attempted to gain an upper hand on the other, they began to import muskets from their trade with Europeans along the coast. These muskets quickly replaced bows and javelins and gave rise to a change from shock tactics of typical Ghanaian or African warfare to the deployment of gun-bearing infantry and various formations such as the right and left wings, also known amongst the Ashanti as the Nifa and Benkum wings. The kingdom of Dinkyera was of course the first to import guns in considerable volume and transition to the new form of warfare, giving them the foundation of their supremacy. But the pursuit of this ironically began their demise. Oral tradition states that it took 3 years for full-on war preparation, even though small skirmishes happened in the interim. In preparation, Ose Tutu consulted with Komofo Enoke. Komofo knew the political landscape very well and was confident that he could win the support of other tributary states and even gain the loyalty of many Dinkyera peoples themselves. Oral tradition tells us Enoke said that he would do some miracles by which he would wean the allegiance of his subjects and induce them to remove from Dinkyera to come to settle in Asante. Komofo Enoke did just that, and the tables turned very quickly in the favor of Ose Tutu and the Ashanti. This glorious union between the former tributary states and Dinkyera expats led Ose Tutu to victory at the Battle of Fayase. Augustus Casely Hayford tells us that Ose Tutu was more than a man. He was our messiah, brave, intelligent, someone who through almost force of will forged this country. He built a culture. It did not evolve. It was made by a great man. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. Proponents of the idea that Africans or black people were in the Americas before Columbus sometimes point to the legend of Queen Calafia as evidence. However, most people are aware that her story derives from a Spanish novel. Her legend is very So I'm redoing this video with some new proponents of the idea that Africans or black people were in the Americas before Columbus sometimes point to the legend of Queen Calafia as evidence. However, most people are aware that her story derives from a Spanish novel. Her legend is very entertaining, but what I find interesting are the rumors about her myth being the origin of the name California. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview. And if you'd like to support the home team on these videos and future animated projects, you may do so on patreon.com. Also, go to afrographics.com, a website where you can gain resources and illustrative infographics on African history. All links are in the description box below. The legends of the Amazons have intrigued many novelists and young impressionable minds. The existence of the Dahomey Amazons and their exploits were the inspiration for the Dora Milaje in Marvel's Black Panther. Ancient Greek historians have even spoken about legends concerning African Amazons. So it's no surprise that a 16th century novelist decided to use these myths and legends to write his own story. Queen Calafia was mentioned in a Spanish romantic novel, Las Surgas, de Asplandian, or The Exploits of Asplandian. The story was about an attack on Christians who lived in the Turkish capital of Constantinople. During the battle, Queen Calafia helped the attacking forces. She was described as a warrior queen who came from a place called California. According to the California African American Heritage Preservation and Restoration Society, Queen Calafia is common knowledge among professors of medieval literature. The myth of Queen Calafia used to be a sort of secret code among poets and sexual rebels, at least until the secret went public in 2001 during the renovation of Disneyland. One addition to Disneyland, called California Adventure, lies a theater decorated with a mural depicting Calafia. Inside, there's a brief widescreen film called Golden Dreams with the voice of Whoopi Goldberg as Calafia, the Queen of California. After her exposure to the world, this mythical black queen became a sort of symbol for the newly multicultural California. The Spanish romance novel The Exploits of Asplandian was published in 1510 by Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo. He wrote it after his tremendously popular Amadis of Gaul. Montalvo gives us details about the queen. Know that on the right hand of the Indies exists an island called California, very close to a side of the earthly paradise, and it was populated by black women, without any man existing there, because they lived in the way of the Amazons. They had beautiful and robust bodies, and were brave and very strong. Their island was the strongest of the world, with its steep cliffs and rocky shores. Their weapons were golden, and so were the harnesses of the wild beasts that they were accustomed to taming so that they could be ridden, because there was no other metal in the island than gold. In his book, Montalvo tells us that Queen Calafia helped the Muslims when Constantinople was being attacked. She raised an army with a large fleet of black women riding on griffins. In the novel, Queen Calafia is captured by the Christians and converts to Christianity. She then goes on to marry a cousin of Asplandian and returns with her army to California. Now, the thing that brings the legend of Queen Calafia into reality is her influence on the name of California itself. A Spanish conquistador named Hernan Cortez explored the northwestern part of Mexico in 1536 and discovered the California Peninsula. Apparently, Cortez was a fan of romance novels and got his hands on Montalvo's book about Queen Calafia. In his novel, Montalvo mentions that one of the precious stones on the Queen's Island were pearls, and legend has it that Cortez found pearls during his expedition. Believing that he had discovered Calafia's island, he named it California in her honor. Now, an expedition Cortez ordered just 3 years later proved that the so-called island was actually a peninsula, but the name California remained. Now, even though it's mostly a legend, many people agree that the state of California was indeed named after the Queen Calafia legend. But there are some who still subscribe to the term Calida Fornax or hot furnace as the origin of the name California. Regardless, her importance as a symbol for the spirit of California is undeniable. Queen Calafia continues to be depicted as the spirit of California in modern-day sculpture, paintings, stories, and films. There's even a remarkable panel of the Black Queen with her Amazons at the Mark Hopkins Intercontinental Hotel in San Francisco. There is absolutely no denying her influence. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and would like to help out in its continued production, please consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. One of my favorite oral histories coming right out of West Africa. What up, African world? It's your boy Home Team here. I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview. And today I want to talk about the legend of Princess Yanenga. Now, before I talk about Princess Yanenga, we have to understand a little bit about the region itself and her people. The Dagomba people. The Dagomba people are from northern Ghana, and according to them, their origins lie with a man named Tohazi, meaning Red Hunter. Now, Tohazi is believed to have migrated from Tunga, which is supposedly east of Lake Chad in Central Africa. He came from this region to Nigeria, then to Mali, and then finally settling in Burkina Faso. Tohazi was a great warrior who fought in a war against a Malayan king. So pleased with his war prowess, the Malayan king is said to have given one of his daughters, named Paga Wagga, in marriage to him. They had a son named Pogonombo. Now Pogonombo was given a king's daughter from Gurma, and they had a son named Nadega, from which all the Gumbo people claim descent. And this is where we get to the legend of Princess Yanenga. Princess Yanenga was revered for being the most beautiful girl in the entire kingdom. Princess Yanenga was the daughter of King Nadega of the 12th century of the Gumbo Kingdom, which was in northern Ghana. Princess Yanenga was an adored and beloved princess who, at the age of 14, fought for her father against the neighboring Mandinka people. She was also an extraordinary horseman. She even rode better than her brothers, and even better than the kingdom's warriors. She was a brave warrior, adept at using javelins, spears, and bows. As Yanenga aged, she greatly desired to find a husband, yet her father hadn't prepared one for her, which perplexed her greatly. Yanenga was so precious to her people that her father refused to let her marry, a decision that inevitably deeply saddened her. She felt as though she couldn't complain directly to her father, so she began to plant a field of wheat. In a few months, the crop became lush and beautiful, but over time, Yanenga allowed it to rot. Her father became very confused and perplexed as to why she was doing this and demanded an explanation. Princess Yanenga responded and said, "You see, father, as precious as you say I am, still you let me rot like the wheat in this field." Princess Yanenga explained to her father that that was how she felt being unable to marry, like a rotting field of wheat. However, her father was unmoved, and King Nadega ordered Princess Yanenga to be locked away. Fortunately enough, Princess Yanenga had friends amongst the king's guards because she was so beloved. So one night, one of the king's guardsmen actually helped Princess Yanenga escape. Both of them rode long into the night and were later spotted and attacked by Mandinka warriors. Princess Yanenga and the guard routed their attackers, but the guard paid for the victory with his life. Yanenga, deeply saddened and now alone deep in the forest far, far away from the Gumbo, decided to be brave and carry on northward. At one point, Princess Yanenga had to cross the river, and being the brave woman that she was, she traveled across the strong currents and successfully got to the other side. Yanenga was exhausted from her effort, and she fell asleep on the back of her horse. But then she spotted a house. It belonged to Rael, a famous elephant hunter. Upon seeing Yanenga, Rael immediately bowed as he assumed that she was some Mandinka general or warrior, because she was dressed so elegantly in men's clothing and gave orders as if she was a king. Rael let Yanenga stay in his home, but after a while, Yanenga came to him in secret and told him who she was, daughter of Nadega, princess of Dagomba. After this revelation, the two of them fell in love and had a son named Odregu, which means stallion. Odregu went on to be the founder of the mighty Mossad Kingdom. Yanenga was a legendary princess considered to be the mother of the Mossad people of modern-day Burkina Faso. The Mossad people were known to be excellent horse riders and had
time for the percolator. It's time for the percolator. Percolator.
very strong cavalry force that rivaled the Mali Empire and the Songhai Empire. They frequently had success against these two empires as they raided deep into enemy territory. They even burned down Timbuktu at one point in time. The Mossad Kingdom is not only unique because of their legendary Princess Yanenga story, but they were also unique because they vehemently opposed Islam when other Africans tried to convert them forcefully. They were successful in their attempts at holding on to their traditional African religious beliefs, despite numerous attempts by multiple African empires like the Mali Empire, Songhai Empire, Massina Empire, and the Fulani Sokoto Empire to convert them. Now today, many statues of Princess Yanenga can be found in the capital of Burkina Faso. I really hope you guys enjoyed this African legend as much as I have. And as always, my YouTube videos are just merely introductions to African history. If you guys want to learn more about African history, I actually offer full-blown African history courses on this website called Patreon. I teach about African empires, oral history, and mythology. So with a pledge of $1 a month through Patreon, you guys can have access to all the courses and project updates. I just recently wrapped up our course on the Wagadu Empire. You guys can check it out in the link below. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's your boy Home Team. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. She was the most beautiful and beloved woman in all of the kingdom of the Gamba. Princess Yanenga, as precious as she was to her people, none could match the love her father had for her. He praised her not only for her unmatched beauty, but her skill with the sword, spear, and her gift in riding and taming the most powerful stallions. Indeed, the king showed her off well. Her strength and courage even put his greatest warriors to shame. Despite being praised as one of the greatest warriors in all of the Gamba, a high honor amongst her people, Princess Yanenga was often conflicted. Sadness became a common theme throughout her days. You see, the princess wanted her prince. Yanenga asked her father to give her away in marriage, but her father refused. How can I lose the Gamba's greatest warrior to marriage? Her father's proclamation deeply saddened her. Her words fell on deaf ears as she begged and pleaded with her father. One day, she got an idea. She planted a beautiful field of wheat, which impressed her father. After seeing the excitement he had and how he boasted about her agricultural prowess to his elite friends, she allowed the wheat to rot. Her father, troubled by this act, said to Yanenga, "My love, what is the meaning of this?" Yanenga, realizing her moment has come, gathered her courage and told her father, "You see, father, as precious as you say I am, still you let me rot like the wheat in this field." Her father, filled with rage, immediately locked her away in the palace whilst his pride recovers. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Saddened by her condition, the king's horsemen proceeded to help Yanenga escape. He dressed her as a man and gave her her stallion. They rode together gallantly through the night, the North Star in their vision and freedom on their minds. But as time passed, they were met with Melenke warriors. The king's horsemen knew that they both would surely die if they fought. So with all his strength he fought the Melenke. One by one they fell. But sadly, his efforts weren't enough, for he was killed. But his heroic effort distracted them away from Princess Yanenga as she fled. Yanenga pressed forward, heading north out of the land of the Gamba, her home. Soon, Yanenga found an elephant hunter named Rael. He cared for her and gave her shelter. Rael, not knowing she was a woman because she was dressed as a man, did not at all recognize who she really was, the heir to the throne. Princess Yanenga saw that Rael was a good man and decided to reveal who she really was. and the two fell deeply in love. Yanenga and Rael had a son they named Weyodrego, which means stallion. Her lineage went on to create a nation, the nation of Burkina Faso. Today, in Burkina Faso, the beautiful Princess Yanenga is acknowledged as the founding Queen Mother. If you like these videos and would like to see more, you can support us on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. This created a perfect opportunity to attack Aksum. Goody led her army through raided and misunderstood queens in all of African history. What up, African World? It's your boy Home Team here. I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview. And today we're going to talk about Queen Goody of Ethiopia. Now, Queen Goody was an Ethiopian queen of the 10th century, and she outright dominated and destroyed the Aksumite Empire. She completely laid it to waste, like destroying the countryside, destroying churches, and she literally almost annihilated the entire male line of the Aksumite dynasty. It brings a whole new meaning to woman's scorn. Her deeds have been recorded by Ethiopian priests and oral historians throughout the entire region, and numerous written historical accounts attest to her rule. One scholar in particular named Paul Hens wrote, and I quote, "She is said to have killed the emperor, ascended the throne herself, and reigned for 40 years. Accounts of her violent misdeeds are still related among peasants in the North Ethiopian countryside." Paul continued and said, "On my first visit to the rock church of Abria and Atsbaha in eastern Tigray in 1970, I noticed that its intricately carved ceiling was blackened by soot. The priest explained it was the work of Goody, who had piled the church full of hay and set it ablaze 9 centuries before." Now, Ethiopian tradition, especially amongst the men, suggests that Queen Goody sacked and burned churches, specifically trying to target the male royal lineage. Now, Queen Goody was thought to be an Ethiopian Jew, but some suggest that she actually followed a more traditional indigenous religion. She's believed to have come from the Sidamo people of northwest Ethiopia, especially because they have a tradition of matriarchal rulers. Other scholars suggest she might have come from the Aga people, as some Ethiopian kings alluded to. Now, on the surface level, Queen Goody, especially from an Ethiopian male perspective, can be seen as a monster who completely destroyed the Aksumite Empire, sending it into the Dark Ages. Ethiopian men even gave her a nickname, calling her Asato, meaning fire, largely suggesting that everything she touched burned in flames. I find it interesting to note that the perception of Queen Arowello of Somalia and Queen Goody of Ethiopia are quite similar, especially considering the male perspective. However, at the expense of sounding like a misogynist, I thought I'd give you guys a little background into who Queen Goody was from a popular Ethiopian narrative. Much of the legend of Queen Goody derives from the Chronicle of Ethiopia in the 13th century. It goes as follows. Goody was a princess from a royal house. Her grandfather was the Emperor Wedem Asferi, and her mother was from the Ahahal district in Tigray. The Chronicle suggests that due to an intrigue that Goody possessed, she was banished from the court and became a prostitute in Aksum. Now, the Chronicle does not tell us what exactly this intrigue was, but perhaps it had something to do with whom she either wanted to marry or who she was having relations with. As a prostitute in Aksum, a deacon wanted to make Goody her mistress. She refused, saying that she was from a royal family and he could not afford her. The deacon insisted vehemently, and eventually Goody agreed, under the condition that he give her a golden umbrella and golden shoes. The deacon tore a piece of a golden curtain from St. Mary of Zion Church so that Goody could make herself golden shoes. When the people of Aksum noticed the torn curtain, they began investigating the matter and soon found the culprit. Goody was found guilty because she had provoked the deacon to do the act. Her right breast was cut off, and she was banished from Aksum. Goody was chased from Aksum until reaching the Red Sea, where Zenobis, the son of a Syrian king, found her. He nursed her back to health and later took her as his wife. Like her husband, Goody converted to Judaism. She urged him without success to attack Aksum. However, he knew too well how powerful Aksumite kings were. Soon, thanks to her spies, Goody found out that the Aksumite king Degnajan had gone to some Arab country and perished with his entire army. This created a perfect opportunity to attack Aksum. Goody led her army through Massawa, then stopped at Dohono, where she sent a message to her mother's land asking people to join her. When she conquered Aksum, she burned St. Mary Zion Church, the king's palace, and many other Christian buildings. Afterwards, she ruled Aksum for over 40 years. Now, the tangible evidence historians have collected largely back up the oral history presented in the Chronicle of Ethiopia. Now, it's a known fact that Aksum was indeed conquered in 970 by a queen who burned many churches. It's also a known fact that King Degnagan went on a military campaign and never returned. Even more tangible evidence tells us that there was a king of Al-Habesh who sent a young man to Nubia to ask for military aid because his country was being demolished by a woman. The Arab historian Ibn Hakel stated in his account, and I quote, "The country of the Habasha has been ruled by a woman for many years now. She has killed the king of the Habasha, who was called Hadani. Until today, she rules with complete independence in her own country and the frontier areas of the country of the Hadani in the southern part of the Habashi." Now, although Queen Goody is often demonized for being responsible for the Ethiopian Dark Ages, she's also credited for building the very foundation of the Zagwe dynasty, as her bloodline went on to establish the first ruling class of the Abyssinian Empire, one of the greatest empires in all of African history. Some scholars have speculated that one of the impacts of Goody's rule was the various languages related to Amharic spoken throughout southwestern Ethiopia, which could have been Aksumite military settlements isolated by her conquests, and also Sadamo migrations. Local traditions around Adikawa, where apparently she was buried, state the fact that Queen Goody possibly had a sort of hybrid religion in which she incorporated indigenous beliefs with Judaism. And testament to her impact, Queen Goody's stela is found in Ethiopia today. Queen Goody definitely deserves her spot amongst the top queens in all of African history. I hope you guys enjoyed the legend of Queen Goody. And also, if you want to take full-blown history courses on African history, I offer them on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Special shout out to Quelly TV, the next big thing in black film. And also special shout out to Sincere Ignorance. Check out her blog and Quelly TV in the link below. It's your boy, Home Team. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. The Mwene Congo, or kings of the Congo Empire, were ideologically and politically in bed with the Portuguese. They were obsessed with Portuguese goods and services and virtually allowed their so-called European brothers to manipulate the whole country, enslaving the very elite within Bakongo society. This ultimately led to the various civil wars that absolutely ravaged the country and left many Bakongo people devastated. Ironically, out of all the individuals within the empire, it was a young girl who decided to speak truth to power, initiating the first documented religious movement in Central Africa. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. Today, we're going to talk about the life of Kempa Vita, one of the most important African figures that we rarely speak about. What she was able to accomplish as a young woman was very impressive, especially because the Bakongo countryside was so politically unstable. The Bakongo people were introduced to Christianity with the arrival of the Portuguese in the 15th century, and many Bakongo nobles were baptized into the faith. Campavita herself was baptized and was renamed Beatrice. Kempa was said to be a Congolese prophet and the founder of a Christian movement that became known as Antonianism. Her movement became very hostile toward the European missionaries in Congo. She was born around 1684 in a small provincial town near Mount Kibangu at the banks of the Mbedizi River in the eastern end of the Kingdom of Congo, today part of Angola. As all Congolese who had been Catholics for nearly 2 centuries, she was baptized as soon as a priest passed her town. Kempa's family were members of the highest group of Congolese nobility, but unfortunately at her birth, the Kingdom of Congo was torn by armed turbulence. A period of civil war followed the death of King Antonio I at the Battle of Mbwila. As a result, the former capital of Mbanza Congo was abandoned in 1678 and left in ruins. Mbanza Congo was important because it was the ancient center of the Bakongo people, a symbol of civilization, history, and pride. The country was divided into major factions ruled by rival pretenders to the throne. The Capuchin missionary Fra Bernardo de Gallo reports that Kempa had her first vision when she was about 8 years old. In her vision, 2 Nkitas, or children from the other world, played with her and gave her a beautiful glass rosary. She started to get a strong inclination toward religion. As Kempavita grew older, her interest in the spiritual side of life increased, and it became obvious that she was gifted. She was trained to become an Nganga, meaning knowledge or skill in the Kakongo language, a person said to be able to communicate with the other world. Kempa became a particular kind of medium called Nganga Marinda, whose special ability was to address social problems as well as individual ones. This very respected office involved helping people who had problems originating from the other world. As a Marinda Nganga, she was also linked to the so-called Campasi Society, Campasi meaning suffering. Young initiates were chosen from the community, like in the case of Kempavita, and put inside a secret and isolated enclosure. They were taught new languages as well as occult knowledge and had to swear an oath of secrecy. In 1703, Kempa and her neighbors left the Mbedizi Valley and joined the new colonists dedicated to restoring the former capital, Mbanza Congo. In August 1704, Kempavita fell ill with a mysterious sickness. She later reported to Fra Bernardo de Gallo that she died and that she was reborn as Saint Anthony. The saint had entered her dead body and she received the divine commandment to go and preach. She followed the example of the Capuchins and distributed her personal property. She set off to preach to the king of Kimbangu, but he refused to see her. She argued that the king was not determined enough to restore the kingdom and therefore she would do it herself. Another Bakongo woman supported Kempa, claiming that Kempa was the real voice of God. Both women preached against greed and jealousy, amongst other things. Kempa claimed that she died each Friday and spent 2 days in heaven talking to God, just to return to earth on Mondays. While in this state, she learned that Congo must reunite under a new king. The civil war that had plagued Congo since the Battle of Mbwila in 1665 had angered Christ himself. She claimed that God ordered her to build a specific Congolese Catholicism and to unite the country under one king. Kempa's movement was more concerned with the moral principles of her faith and not the European traditionalisms that plagued it. She convinced the Bakongo that one day they will have a saint of their own, an African one. Kempa claimed that in her trips to heaven, God revealed to her the real history of Christianity. According to her visions, Jesus had been born in Mbanza Congo, the spiritual capital of all the Bakongo people. His baptism in Nazareth was only a fake name for his real place of baptism, which was located in the northern Congolese province of Nsundi. She also professed that his mother Mary was a Bakongo woman. Since one of the rivals to the Congolese throne refused to see her, she visited another. One by one, they all turned her and her followers away. Her followers saw in her an ideal ruler, a social revolutionary and peacemaker. If they could, they would have probably installed her as Queen of Congo, as she would no doubt fight against the greed and violence of the ruling kings. In 1705, her vision came to fruition as herself and thousands of her loyal followers returned to Mbanza Congo and occupied it. Kempo was now the undisputed mistress of the royal capital and determined to fulfill her mission of restoration. Rumors of her powers had spread throughout the country. She built herself a small house behind the ruins of the cathedral and started preaching from there. To help her with her work, she began to commission her little Anthonys, as they were called, who were to become St. Anthony's missionaries all over Congo. The Antonian movement was becoming involved in the politics of the kingdom, and the political authorities were no longer able to control the forces that had been unleashed by her preaching. In 1706, Kempo was captured and tried by Congolese law, in which she was condemned as a heretic and was ordered to be burned at the stake. Although Kempo was killed, her movement outlived her. In fact, many of her followers believed she was still alive. One of the rivals to the Congo throne wanted to ensure that her movement perished, and he found varying levels of success. Some scholars claim that some of her followers were enslaved and brought to America, where they carried out a revolt known as the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina. If this is true, her legacy is certainly far-reaching. Even though Kempavita only temporarily restored the spiritual home of the Bakongo people, her bravery and determination is worthy of note, as she took on the most powerful forces of her day in her early 20s. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. The history of Queen Zinga is something special, not only because she was just a fantastic African figure, but because she was the first African queen I was ever introduced to upon my studies in African history. So today, we're going to talk about the history of the greatest Central African queen, Queen Nzinga. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you like access to full courses and sources, or you simply want to show your support, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. Queen Nzinga is one of our more popular queens from Central Africa. She's a sort of recognizable face because the diaspora has been introduced to her on several occasions. There's even a movie about her life. Queen Nzinga was born to the Mbundu people of Angola, a people who are oftentimes subject to the larger Congo Empire. Following a long tradition of women warriors in Africa, like the queens of ancient Nubia, Queen Nzinga was a warrior herself, literally participating in battle. But more importantly, she was an excellent statesman and diplomat. She shaped and molded local and Portuguese politics in her favor, successfully challenging Portuguese control over her kingdom in the 1600s through these means. Nzinga seized power during the rise of European expansion and trade in Central Africa around the time of the Atlantic slave trade. Challenges from the Portuguese and other European powers, such as the Dutch, prompted a series of reactions from her kingdom, the Kingdom of Ndongo. The Portuguese arrived in the Congo region in 1483 and managed to secure a coastal colony at Luanda by 1575 with the support of the larger Congo kingdom. The Portuguese in particular exerted tremendous pressure on the Kingdom of Ndongo through a Portuguese official named Bento Cardoso, who devised a system in 1608 that demanded the delivery of slaves to the Portuguese through an Ndongo noble. In the event that the noble failed to deliver the slaves, the noble was in turn enslaved himself. To understand how the Portuguese were able to amass such power in the Congo region is because of European diplomacy. Around 1611, the Portuguese had much support from the larger Congo Empire and their rulers, the Manicongo, and the Portuguese also had support from rogue warriors in the Imangala, who were notorious for their military dominance. This combination put the Kingdom of Ndongo in an impossible situation, as they had virtually everyone against them, African and European. Understanding this political climate during this time is pivotal in comprehending the genius of Queen Yanenga, as she largely neutralized all these threats. The Portuguese began to mobilize with the assistance of the Mbangala warriors, nearly bringing Ndongo to its knees. Queen Yanenga, no doubt, came to power in dangerous times, but her rise to power was not without controversy. The Mbundu people embraced strict constraints on female political power, and generally resisted attempts to organize into larger confederations. Despite this, Yanenga managed to overcome all of this and present herself as ruler of the Mbundu through political acumen. When Queen Yanenga's brother came to the throne, he targeted Yanenga. Yanenga was reportedly the daughter of a bedwarmer, and her brother was seen as the legitimate ruler. Her struggle for legitimacy proved to cause much contention in the royal Mbundu household. Thus, Yanenga soon fled Ndongo, but returned to negotiate a treaty with the Portuguese at Luanda in 1622, claiming to represent the kingdom of Ndongo. In this negotiation, she's famously portrayed by a Dutch artist speaking with a Portuguese ambassador on top of a slave, as the Portuguese refused to provide her a seat during negotiations. She certainly wasn't going to entertain that disrespect, hence the portrait exemplifying her resistance to supposed Portuguese dominion. Before securing an audience with the Portuguese, Yanenga accepted Catholicism in symbolic form, as it was an act of political expediency helping her secure the Ndongo throne. After her proclamation of sole ruler of Ndongo, her brother is said to have died under mysterious circumstances in 1623. As mentioned before, Queen Yanenga was a skillful diplomat, warrior, and politician in that she secured support of major European powers by converting to Catholicism, as well as gaining the support of escaped slave communities to consolidate her power base in the region. Yanenga was surrounded by African rivals and European challengers to Portuguese power in the region. While leader of Ndongo, she was able to find middle ground through a series of alliances with both her African rivals, such as the Mbangala, and European challengers, such as the Dutch. She offered escaped slaves their freedom in exchange for their loyalty and made an alliance with the Dutch to circumvent Portuguese demands. Confederations between Ndongo and neighboring African groups were created to gain control of slave routes. Queen Yanenga also organized a guerrilla army and appointed her own sisters as war leaders. She personally led her troops into battle, took the title of Ngola or king, and even kept male concubines. When relationships with the Portuguese began to crumble around 1624, Queen Yanenga's strategic alliance with the Mbangala and escaped slaves from Portuguese-held territories greatly aided in consolidating her power. For some time, Queen Yanenga had to flee Ndongo for Matamba. Once there, she created an entirely new government. Through the 1630s, Yanenga used her armies to block Portuguese influence in the region, and by the 1640s had forged an alliance with the Dutch. This enabled Queen Yanenga to build up her base of power in Matamba and dominate areas previously controlled by the Portuguese. While Queen Yanenga was on the throne, the Portuguese could not get a stronghold over the region, and all attempts at her life by the Portuguese failed miserably, as she continually outwit them. Queen Yanenga is remembered as a remarkable leader and brilliant military strategist. Today, she's respected as the mother of Angola. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace. There is no doubting the tremendous physical, psychological, and economic harm slavery has caused the African American community. Aside from that, after slavery, state-sanctioned terrorism against black people in America was unprecedented. Just recently, they happened to find a mass grave of black people after the white supremacist invasion of Black Wall Street, and all this because black people happened to work together and build something economically significant, competing on a high level. This is why recent talks of reparations in media today is so important, because of the wealth that was systematically stolen. But long before reparations ever became a popular topic of discussion, black women entrepreneurs were ensuring that they would have a piece of the American pie. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and supporting this content. If you'd like to access courses and sources, or you simply want to support the Home Team, you may do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below. Today, we're going to talk about two black women who were among the first African Americans to become millionaires after slavery. Let's begin with one of the more popular figures, Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker was an entrepreneur, philanthropist, political and social activist, and was considered by many to be the wealthiest black woman in the early 20th century. Her real name was Sarah Breedlove, and she was born in Louisiana in 1867. Sarah was the first child in her family born into freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. After the death of her parents, she hit very hard times as she became an orphan at the tender age of 7. In her own words, she's quoted as saying, "I had little or no opportunity when I started out in life, having been left an orphan and being without mother or father since I was 7 years of age." She married at a very young age and then became known as Madam C.J. Walker. Like many African American women at the time, she suffered from the products available that certainly didn't accommodate the needs and concerns of black hair care. Thus, Madam C.J. Walker began learning hair care regimens from her brothers who were barbers in St. Louis. After working for another entrepreneur in the black hair care business, Madam C.J. Walker began developing her own product line. She started experimenting with products in her own home and also used other items in the market. After some time, her hard work paid off as she developed a shampoo and ointment with sulfur that helped stimulate the scalp and made it healthier for hair growth. This is how Madam C.J. Walker made her millions as she continued to develop and market her line of cosmetics and hair care products to black women. Her products were distributed and sold door to door throughout the U.S. What makes Madam C.J. Walker remarkable is that she built something to meet the needs of her community, and not only that, she became well known for her philanthropy and activism as she personally donated and financed numerous black organizations centered on empowering the community. Before she died, she created an institution where she trained people in the hair care business and entrepreneurship, creating a new line of black entrepreneurs. The next black woman on our list is Annie Malone. Annie Malone was a prominent businesswoman, inventor, and philanthropist, and her business acumen and achievements made her a millionaire. Without her, there would be no Madam C.J. Walker, because Madam C.J. Walker learned a lot about the business by working for Annie as a commission agent, and she allegedly took Annie's original formula and made her own. Annie was born in southern Illinois to enslaved parents in 1877. Like Madam C.J. Walker, she was also orphaned and later went on to get some education. She took an interest in chemistry, but because of her health issues, she couldn't continue her studies. Over time, Annie grew fascinated with hair as she often practiced hairdressing with her sister. This ultimately led to her interest in the hair care industry. With expertise in both chemistry and hair care, Annie began to develop her own hair care products. At that time, many women used animal fats, oils, soap, or bacon grease to straighten their curls, which damaged their hair and scalp greatly. Annie sought to remedy that with her own products. Her product began to become so popular that she opened up her first store in St. Louis. Unfortunately, due to the racism, she was denied access to available distribution networks, which led her to go door to door using word of mouth and the quality of her product as a sell. She orchestrated a fairly large advertising campaign in the black press, held news conferences, toured many southern states, and recruited many women whom she trained to sell her products. One of the women being Madam C.J. Walker, as mentioned before. Her success eventually led her to open a facility to manufacture her own product. This facility became a hub for the African American community as it housed a 500-seat auditorium, dining and meeting rooms, a roof garden, dormitory, gymnasium, bakery, and chapel. What Annie Malone built led her to be the very first recorded millionaire black woman in the United States at the time. By 1926, her institution employed around 170 people, and her business expanded into South America, various African countries, and the Philippines, reportedly employing up to 100,000 women. She no doubt paved the way for future black women entrepreneurs and business owners. I find it so interesting that many black women today are themselves becoming business owners and entrepreneurs by creating products for their own hair and other cosmetic needs. As black women continue to be largely ignored in the beauty industry today, they are no doubt paving their own path while simultaneously establishing a new paradigm in popular standards of beauty. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help out in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.
Hey guys, we'll be right back. We're going to start a new stream where we can talk about this, so we'll be back in a few.